Hey guys, this is Kim Lepre from the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. I'm a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual host. Be sure to check out all of the other amazing podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Instant Relevance Podcast. The Instant Relevance Podcast is an educational podcast featuring the latest news and resources to make learning relevant for all students. Follow us on Twitter at InstantRel. I'm Denis Sheeran, author of Instant Relevance, using today's experiences to teach tomorrow's lessons, and Hacking Mathematics, 10 Problems That Need Solving. I'm a math teacher for 13 years and an administrator for 6, and I am excited to be podcasting.
I am Raymond Steinmetz, co-host of the Instant Relevance Podcast. I'm a K-8 math instructional coach from Rhode Island. I write and blog about a variety of topics related to education and parenting. You can find my work at www.blendedlearningmath.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at blended_math.
Welcome to the Instant Relevance Podcast, episode 12, and we are back with an Instant Relevance Make It Real mini moment here. Raymond has got in touch with me and said, hey, I saw something pretty interesting that I thought might catch your eye. Let's see what we can talk about. What was it? What were you telling me about? Something about cars?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, Dennis, but just recently there was an individual who is driving their Tesla, and apparently Tesla has a pretty sweet autopilot feature. You know, personally, I don't own a Tesla, and, my Toyota Sienna does not have autopilot yet, but it seems like there's been an ongoing problem, and just recently it was in the news, but apparently a lot of people are falling asleep at the wheel while on autopilot, and in particular, this individual in this news story was intoxicated, and the police, it took them 7 miles and about 7 to 10 minutes to pull over this driver who was drunk and asleep at the wheel. I thought this was very interesting because, first of all, I think that the advent of self-driving cars is an interesting topic in general. I think that you could kind of do a lot with it in school as far as, different things in science class or coding you can talk about in computer science, like how it would actually work. The safety features that you would need in an autopilot system. You could even take this particular story and apply it to a coding class or a science class and say, hey, you have this engineering problem where people are falling asleep. How could we solve it? What code could we put in place? What algorithm could we say, if this happens, then do this? But also, just kind of as a social science issue, the fact that this person was arrested for drunk driving and they weren't even driving. And so there's just a lot of different avenues in a story like this. I'm not even sure how we would apply it to math, but I think that there's a lot here, Dennis. I don't know. Did you see this story?
I did, actually, and that's full disclosure, I also do not drive a Tesla. So, maybe one of those days we can get to the Tesla level. But I saw that and kind of glanced over it for a minute there. And then I thought the same thing you thought. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. There's problems here that need solving. Is it something, like you said, like, do we code something in so that the police car can actually communicate with the Tesla car and say it needs to pull over and cut that off sooner? Or is it something about a feature inside the car that recognizes, heart rate, or something like that in the driver so that it wakes them up with an alarm or something like that to make sure that they're there? But at the same time, that social science aspect of it, like, we've told, teenagers for years and adults for years, you should have a designated driver, right? You should, if you're gonna be out legally having alcohol, you should have a designated driver on the way home, just to make sure that, you get home safely. And Tesla was like, we're going to be your designated driver. We're your autopilot. And so there are a lot of specific problems you can put in front of kids in different grade levels and different subject areas. They say, let's try to solve this problem. But the bigger thing that stuck out to me was kind of a big teaching philosophy thing here, because I don't know if you see the world this way, but my world is starting to appear to me in metaphors kind of nonstop. And when I saw that, I actually kind of viewed it as a metaphor for kind of teaching in some ways today. It took 7 miles for this car to slow down and pull over when a police car had been flashing for it to slow down and pull over. And it's when it's me, like if I'm awake and I'm not, asleep at the wheel pretty much, and the police lights go on behind me, my heart rate's through the roof. I'm pulling over and I hope that, they're going for the car in front of me instead of me because, I'm full disclosure. I also do not always drive the speed limit, but that's beside the point. I saw this as this interesting moment of, there's a lot of teachers we work with, a lot of administrators, a lot of school personnel that have they kind of put it on autopilot. They've dialed it in a little bit, and some of them are actually asleep at the wheel. They're just letting school happen. I've always done it this way. It works really well. Let's just get through this. I don't have to do anything new, even try anything harder. And then somebody puts some new fancy technology in front of them even and says, here's some new technology, like a Tesla or like a Chromebook or something else. Like, oh, that's nice and pretty, but I'm just going to use that to make it easier for me to sleep at the wheel because I don't have to try any harder now that these kids can do these other things on here. And there's plenty of teachers in our world and that we cross by every day that feel that way. But there's people out there too who are the metaphorical police officers in this story who are saying, pull over, come on, get off the road if you're going to be dialed in. Let's change your situation. Let's wake you up. Let's teach you how to use this thing that's in front of you right now, and let's get you home safe, but energized, excited. And I think that that's what's really cool, is to think that we can take an opportunity to say, no, just because you're dialed in doesn't mean you just get to go on autopilot. We can change that. We can pull you over. We can say there's something else here. But at the same time, I don't think we can expect them to pull over instantly, like somebody who's awake, like me, or you as we're driving. That took 7 miles and 10 minutes to pull them over. It might take some time to take somebody who's asleep at the wheel on autopilot to just kind of come to a gradual stop, to realize that they need to have a conversation and then to wake up and move from there. So I kind of saw that as, a great opportunity for kids to solve a problem, but also as a bigger metaphor of, what we do every day, to not be on autopilot, to not be checked in, to not let the technology run the day, to know when it's time to get to the side and to focus and to shift your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to take your metaphor even just one more step. Sometimes, just like this guy, he needed autopilot, and I believe reading the article, autopilot probably saved this guy's life. I mean, with how intoxicated he was, and as a teacher, with everything that we cope with on a daily basis, sometimes that, just autopilot, getting through it, just, up in front of the class, doing the routine, that gets through the job and sometimes gets you through it when everything else in the rest of your life isn't going that great. And so I understand how teachers can get into autopilot and can kind of take the safe step back and say, I'm just going to coast for a little while, because I think that the system that we have allows that to happen. But I really like the metaphor you used with, other people in the school building, in the school district, on Twitter, all those people in the education world kind of putting their flashers on and saying, you know what, we're better than this. We can teach better than this. We can do better than this. I think that, I just said teach better. I think that, some of the people that we've had on this podcast have really kind of stood up and been that flasher and said, hey, pull over. Listen, there is another way to do this. You don't have to be doing this every single day the same way with, honestly, not having as much fun as you possibly could. It's amazing to me sitting with teachers on a daily basis and having discussions, and how many of them feel like the fun has been sucked out of the room, and how they don't have an ability to control what goes on in their own classroom.
You're right. I think that's one of the things. We just need to look at it this way and think, am I on autopilot right now, and why? Am I asleep at the wheel, and why? Or can I put my flashers on for somebody else, and why? And we can be all of those roles. I think it happens sometimes that we're asleep at the wheel, but just identify what role you're in right now, and see what part you can play in that metaphor. And I think that's the message that we get out of this mini moment is, just be aware, recognize your role, and don't stay asleep at the wheel for too long.